When I talked to Sterling a week or two ago, and he asked me could I uh, introduce Stu, I knew that'd be an easy job because I met this guy, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. I, like I was telling him over supper tonight, I pray about once a week, and I thank the Lord for the 6 people that were ahead of me that turned down a long-timer that showed up in Florence, South Carolina from going to a retreat. So I became his driver, and through that I got to meet Stu and a wonderful bunch of people from up north. I thought Yankees were thousands of miles away. So when I go to this retreat, I go 200 miles straight up 95, take a left at Roanoke Rapids for an hour, and I'm there. He drives the same distance down, hour there, and he's there. And this particular retreat was twice a year. I was going through a really tough time, and it's me that makes my sobriety tough. And I hadn't really known Stu that much, but he pulled me to the side right before a meal. And I guess we can see when we're going through stuff and need some help. We sat down in the boardroom, and I knew a little bit about this place, and all my giants had sat in those seats over the years. The founders, the people that kept the torch going, keep the meetings open when I needed them, when I came in. And he sat down and he listened to my problems. He didn't give me any advice or anything. And we sat down and ate, and it just seemed like the calm had hit me. I was okay. I was out of state anyway. None of this stuff was going to come up and catch up with me, but my paranoid mind, I thought it was. But I don't want to take any more of your time, but this is a dear honor of mine, and not because he's about a foot taller than me, but I'll guarantee you this is one of my giants. And just because of what he does, not what he says. He walks the walk because he talks the talk, and he's been doing it for quite a while. I introduce you, Stu, from Severna Park, Maryland.
Thank you, Ronnie. Hi, everybody. My name is Stu Bramble. I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank Sterling and whoever else is involved for giving me the opportunity to come down and participate in this weekend. It's Saturday night, and if you haven't bought it by now, trust me, you ain't going to buy it the rest of the weekend. This message of recovery. I walked in here, and I'd never been here before. And as soon as I walked in, I saw George and Marie sitting over there. And I hadn't seen them in about 35 years. And last time I saw them, I spent a night at their home, a couple nights at their home. I was down there for a conference or something. And then I saw Roy. I hadn't seen Roy in probably 30 years. And ran to Ann Lowry, and I hadn't seen her in about 35 years. So it's like I'm not here, but it's like coming home and meeting some very wonderful friends that you miss. And we picked up and started talking, and it seemed like all we've been doing all weekend is eating. I went out and had lunch with George and Maria today, and Henry and Suzanne from Richmond. Yesterday we had lunch. Went with Johnny, had dinner tonight. I feel like an escapee from Weight Watchers or something. Man, I'm about ready to pop. But and George reminded me of an old friend of ours, Millie Copeland, her and Isaac from down the Outer Banks. And I remember I was sober about 7 years, and I used to go down to the Outer Banks, take my family down on vacation, and I'd hooked up with Millie and Isaac, and we'd go out and lay on the beach, and Millie and I looked like 2 beach whales just laying up there on the beach here sharing. And I said, Millie, I don't hear the things I used to hear in AA. She said, why the hell don't you tell them then? Why don't you say them? They're good enough for you to get sober. They're good enough for the next guy or gal to get sober. I have an aunt who her favorite saying is, if you don't like my apples, don't shake my tree. And so I'm shaking my tree tonight. I'm going to give you some of my apples and see where we go from there. I am so blessed to be able to come to AA a long time ago. On my sobriety date, I'm not a first nighter. It took me a couple of years to get sober, but my sobriety date is March 12, 1966. And so I come along March in about 2 months. If I don't take a drink, I have 51 years of sobriety a day at a time. I was 25 years of age when I got sober. Came to AA when I was 23. So it's not bad. You do the math. I'm 76. I'll be 77 this year. And it's the most exciting thing getting sober. It's the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. I love being sober. I'm one of these guys, even after all these years, I'm excited about being sober. I'm enthused about being sober. You don't get enthused about being sober, you may get enthused about drinking. I'll tell you what, my home group is the Curtis Bay Monday noon group. I go to a noon meeting because there's a lot of old people who don't want to drive at nighttime, and they go to noon meetings. And you want to see a bunch of old people, you come to my home group. A young person there is somebody probably in their 50s. We got 4 members of my home group, all of them have over 40 years sobriety. And all we do there is serve basic good old AA. We still have a coffee maker on a regular basis at that meeting. He comes in at least 2 hours early to make coffee that's ready at least an hour before the meeting. We still serve donuts at our meeting. We have a sign hanging on our podium, no volunteers at this meeting. If you get called on, you don't raise your hand, trust you're not going to get called on. It's one of these meetings where they call on the people, and that's how it was in the old days when we got sober. And when I first came to AA, I happened to be riding down the highway. Oh, and I also want to mention this. I brought my buddy Larry with me. Larry travels a lot with me. And Larry and I go back 45 years. And we got a lot of friends in my home group that we all go back 40-some years. And I remember riding down the road, and I was telling my friends I'm going down. We travel with a lot of places, and we travel a lot together. His wife has a business running, and my wife doesn't like to travel. And they said, aren't you ever worried about a gangster or somebody robbing you on these trips? I said, hell no, I bring my own gangster with me. I bring Larry. You know what I mean? Larry, everybody should, if you stay so a long time, everybody should have a Larry. I got my own Larry. I sponsor a lot of guys. About half of them, I guess, I sponsor, but I sponsor a lot of guys. But Larry and I have a special bond, and real fast, I sponsored Larry in 1972. And they had 11 and a half years of sobriety. He decided to go out for a drink. It only took him 22 years to get back here. A lot of drunks don't even get back here. Oh, I'd pick him up every now and then, take him to a meeting. The judge would send him to AA. The first time in AA, he never had been arrested or anything. Maybe a couple court martials in the Navy, but never no time in jail. By the time he got back here, he had 12 DWIs, 9 convictions driving without a license, in jail 46 times, and went to prison. And then he came back and he said, I think you're ready now. You know. But every now and then he would call me, and then, look, I sponsored him. I told him, when you start drinking, my sponsorship hat comes off and my 12-step hat goes on. You can't sponsor someone drinking. But he'd call me and he'd say something like this. Hey, how about if we get together today and go for lunch? I said, great. We'll go catch a little noontime AA meeting, then we'll go to lunch. He said, well, I'm not going to a meeting. I said, hell, then I'm not going to lunch. I picked him up one time, you talk about humility, I picked him up one time and took him to a meeting, and he picked up a white chip from a guy he sponsored in his first trip in AA who had 25 years sobriety. Talk about being humble. One night he shows up at my house. We never lost touch, except when he was in jail a lot of time, but we never really lost touch. So one night I'm home at 3:30 in the morning, I'm sleeping. I hear this on my door. I go downstairs, open the door, there's Larry. And I says, what do you want to get sober now? He said, no, I need a place to crash tonight. I said, don't move, stand in my doorway, don't move, and watch me. And I walked across the room, and I got a mirror over top of my fireplace. I'm looking in my mirror, and I'm looking. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm seeing if I look stupid. Like I'm going to let you come in my house to crash. I said, you don't want to get sober? You can sleep on my lawn, my driveway. You ain't coming in my house. And then I wake up in the morning, and Kathy's purse is missing, my TV's gone. And, you're not coming into my house. And so finally, through the grace of God, he came off a drunk in March, and he came back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what a wonderful surprise and a pleasant experience just having him in my life. I want to thank him for riding down there with me, keeping me company over all these times we do a lot of traveling. I was riding down the highway in 1964. I was 23 years of age, not quite 24. And I reached that point where a lot of them reach, where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. A lot of people had been disgusted with me for a long time. My family was ashamed of me. My father even told me, don't even use his last name. I mean, he said, you come down here and raise hell. I threw his next door neighbor through a barroom window one night, and I was just like a tornado going through his neighborhood. And then I would leave and we would leave the area, and he'd have to clean up the pieces that I left down there, the mess. And he was disgusted with me and everything. But that day I got to the point I couldn't stand myself. We called back in the old days, I was soul sick. I couldn't stand the person I became. And I didn't know what to do about it. I never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was thinking about driving this car I'm driving, going across the median in a highway, and maybe pull it in front of a tractor trailer or something and wipe myself out. But then I think I probably can't even kill myself right. I'll probably end up being a paraplegic the rest of my life or something. So through the grace of God, I looked up on a hill, and there was a little church on the hill and had a steeple and a cross on it. And I turned off God when I was 19 years old. I had got married at a young age, and I had my second child was born, and she died 3 months later. And I figured if God really loved me, he wouldn't have taken my daughter from me. So I don't want nothing to do with God or religion or anything decent in my life. And just had a bad attitude from that day on. But here I am looking up, and I'm drawn to, like a magnet to this little church. I didn't know what kind of church it was. I'd never been to that church before. And I went up, and I went to church, and the minister happened to be in the church. He was just being a minister. He wasn't being a counselor or anything like that. He was just being a little minister. Sat down at the table, and I proceeded to sit across from him and tell him how my whole world's coming apart. I had marriage problems. I had health problems, job problems. I had legal problems. I had financial, you name them, I had them. And I proceeded to tell him about all this trouble I was in. And he said, but you're forgetting about, when I got finished, he said, you're forgetting about one problem. I said, what that? He said, you're drinking. I said, well, hell, if you had all my problems, you'd be drinking too. He said, you ever think your drink is causing the problems? I said, no. He said, well, look, I can help you, but you got to do something about the drinking problem first, and I can't help you. But I got a member of my congregation that is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, of AA. I said, you mean 3 A's, Alcoholics Anonymous Association? I didn't know it was 2 A's till I got here. He said, no, it's AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And this man hasn't had a drink in almost 7 years. This is 1964. Now, I don't know what I was looking for, but I said, okay, I'll meet this guy. And I went to my first AA meeting. I'm 23 years old. Back in the 60s, trust me, they were all tough. They were old. Most of them were tough. When many young people around AA in the 60s. And I go to this first meeting, and it's down in the basement of this church. There's maybe 12, 15 people in the meeting. I'm looking around. To me, they all look like they were 100 years of age or older. They were all old-looking people. Most of them probably in their 40s or 50s, but they looked like 100 years old, like I looked tonight probably, and to a young person. Looked around the room, and I'm thinking, my God, what have I got myself in? Look at these old people. I said, they were either bald-headed or had blue hair, and that's just the women in the room. That wasn't even, I hadn't even looked at the men yet. I'm thinking, I got to get the hell out of here, you know what I mean? And they all had nicknames back in those days. All the drunks in A had nicknames. We had a guy who caught freight trains all over the country. His name was Boxcar Smitty. And we had a guy with one eye. His name was One Eye Jack. A guy from Philadelphia. I don't remember what they said, but I'm remembering their names. Philadelphia Phil was there. Had a guy bragging about how much Budweiser he could drink. His name was Johnny Budweiser. They had all these. I'm thinking, I got to get out of here. This is. And they would tell stories. You could almost see the blood running down the aisles. I'm 23 years old. I'm thinking, man, what have I got into here? And I'm thinking, I ain't coming back here. But I'll tell you what, the old man who took me to my first meeting, he knew how to 12-step. He took me home after the meeting, and he didn't say, well, if you want to go to another meeting, give me a call. He knew how to 12-step. He threw a curve at me, because I was going to tell him no. But he says, I'll be here tomorrow night, pick you up at 7:45. I said, okay, and I'm thinking, oh, my God. Now I got to go tomorrow night because he was so nice I can't not go. Well, after 3 days, I called on. I don't have to go back to these meetings if I don't want to. But you know what I found out? I had a disease and not a disgrace back in those days. And I'm a user of society. I'm just a user and abuser, and I found out that I could use AA. I went and told my boss, I'm going to AA. I worked in a factory on the waterfront. And he said, God, you'll see what a 40-hour paycheck looks like now. And my wife said, you'll be leaving home, coming home the same day with the same clothes on. The kids are going to go to the zoo. The landlord's going to, everybody's excited about me going to AA, except for one person, me. I don't want to go to AA. But you know what I missed? I was an action drunk. I missed the action. You know, my whole life, I'm a late starter for most standards. And I used to go to meetings and I hear a lot of these people saying, I swore I'd never be like one of my parents. They were alcoholics and I turned out just exactly like them. And I used to say the same thing. I swore I'd never be like one of my parents. And the reason was because neither one of them drank nor smoked. The two most boring people you ever meet in your entire life. I mean, the holiday's coming up, a big deal on the holiday. Are we going to have iced tea or lemonade? Or maybe this year we may have them both. They were boring. Nothing's happening in my house. My father worked like 2 jobs. I was one of 7 kids. To this day, none of my brothers and sisters ever had a drink or drug problem. I got 6 grandchildren. I got 8 great-grandchildren. As up to this day, there's no alcohol nowhere in my entire family. So I don't know whether I try to make up for the whole damn family. It would happen. But I never missed a drink. I never had a drink I didn't like. I love to drink. And I had developed a tremendous capacity. So I'm about 14, going on 15 years of age, and I'm living in a house, no one's drinking. I'm going to a party, my brother and I, and we're going to drink for the first time. Now, I don't know how much my first ice cream cost. I don't know how much my first Pepsi Cola cost. My first bottle of wine cost me 51 cents. That's a long time ago, over 60 years ago. And but I bought 2 of them for $1.02. 2 bottles of Madeira port wine, nice high top shelf stuff. And we go to this party. I want to sit in the front seat. We're in a 1949 Mercury. I want to sit in the front seat by the shotgun, by the window, the passenger side. I want to lay my arm over the window like this to look like I had a muscle, so we see the girls. We try to press the girls with a muscle. And they said, no, you get in the back seat. So I don't have nothing to do back there, so I started drinking, going to the party. Now, I don't know what was in that bottle until I started drinking it. And all I can describe it is, you ever go to a zoo and you see a lion prancing around in a cage, you open that door, that lion will come roaring out. And that's what happened to me when I started drinking. All of a sudden, boom. AA says, you want to see someone getting sober, look for a profound change in personality. Same person is going to drink again. I went through a profound change in personality when I started drinking. You can't believe this or not. I was shy. I was bashful. I'm the kind of kid who would go to school and the teacher said, Stuart, come up here and give your report in front of the class. And I said, I can't do that. And she said, either do it or I'll give you a failing grade. I said, I don't care. I couldn't talk in front of people. We go to a dance. I'm leaning against the wall. I'm afraid of embarrassing myself. I'm comparing my insides with your outsides. I just felt like a foul ball in tall weeds. I just didn't feel like I fit in. And that's the kind of personality I have. And when I started drinking, that personality changed. All of a sudden, I think I'm better looking, I'm smarter, I'm tougher. Life took on a whole brand new meaning. That booze worked for me, man. It was magic. And all of a sudden now I think I'm like the cat's meow. I just can't wait to drink again. That day I got drunk that evening. I drank that wine I had with me. I wasn't used to drinking. I drank some more stuff at that party. I had my experience, my first blackout. They told me things I said and did the next day I couldn't remember. I know I got sick that night. I know I went in the bathroom and I fell in. They had one of these great big old round tubs, and I fell in this bathtub. I couldn't get out for about 20 minutes. I kept sliding down in the tub. And finally, I got out of the tub. I got sick. I leaned out the window to throw up. I fell out of the damn window. I had trouble from the very first. I fell into a Christmas tree garden. I was in trouble the very first time. And my brother took me home, and we snuck in our bedroom. And my mother must have suspected something, and because she heard me in there moaning or something. The bed kept spinning around. I'm on the top bunk, and my younger brother's on the bottom bunk, and my brother's in a single bed. And she came in, she said, you've been drinking. And I don't know what I said, but she told my older brother, who's not an alcoholic and he can drink, she beat the hell out of my brother for not taking care of me. I got drunk, and he got a bad beating for not taking care of me. And from that time on, I couldn't wait to drink to the point I was drinking almost all the time. By the time I hit 15, 16 years of age, I drank a lot of time, almost every day I could. I love my mother. I miss her to this day. She died about 25 years ago. And she was tough. We lived out in the country. We lived on the water, had a little home on the river, and had a nice green yard, lawn with a hedge. and we were bad, my mother would whip us with a switch. And we'd have to go out and cut our own switch out the hedge. And if we had to go get a second switch, she would really, really give you a whipping. And I learned to put cardboard in my back pockets and all that kind of stuff. And she found out that wasn't working too good, so she's going to try to humiliate us into being good. And my brother and I were bad one day. She said, I'll fix you. And I had two older sisters, and they were in school, and we were like 5, 6 years old. And she took our sister's clothes and dressed my brother and I up in little girls' clothes, my sister's clothes, and put little patent leather shoes on us and little dresses on us. And she made us sit on the front porch of the house. When all the kids came home from school, they'd walk by the house, and they were laughing at us, making fun of us. My brother's crying. I'm sitting there laughing like hell. I think it's funny. I got my sister's clothes on. I got little bows in my hair and everything. And I mean, it's a wonder it's a wonder I didn't grow up to be a transvestite or something. I mean, to me, it was fun. And he hated it. And then she figured that ain't going to work. So, but when I started drinking, they didn't know what to do with me because I was absolutely, I was always in trouble. I'm the only kid in my family who doesn't have a formal education. I got booted out of high school. They frown on throwing your desk out the third-story window of the school and also drinking in the parking lot every day. And so I don't have a formal education. And also, I was dating this girl in high school. And once I started drinking, my personality changed to the point that if you snuck up behind me when I was young, and you take a ball-peen hammer, bust my head open like a coconut, all you see coming out of my head is little naked women in beer bottles. That's all I thought about. I would make love to a sticker bush if I thought there was a girl in there somewhere. You know what I mean? That's all I thought about. I was just wild. I was just crazy. And I was dating this girl, and we were dating. I was thinking about breaking up, and then she said she's pregnant. I thought, oh, my God. Man, I don't want to get married. I'm 17 years of age. But back in the 50s, that's what you did most of the time. If someone got pregnant, you just got married. That's what we did. We got married. We were 17 years of age. We got married, I forget, we got married April the 20th. And I had a son born 3 months later, July the 20th. And I told everybody he was premature. He weighed about 8.5 pounds. He weighed about 8.5 pounds. And my father said, don't worry about it. He said, that first one will come anytime. That second one's probably going to take about 9 months. So here I am. I'm married. I'm booted out of school. I got to go get a job. So I got a job in Baltimore on the waterfront working in the factories. And I wasn't marriage material. I'm not proud of my behavior. But I hear these guys and they talk about when they were drinking, they always saw double. When they were drinking a lot of time. I never saw double when I was drinking, but I guarantee you this. When I did drink, I never saw double, but I always felt single. I take that ring off, and I'm just a different person. And I'm not proud of it, but I was not a good husband. I wasn't faithful. You name it. Phew. Live fast, die young, be a handsome corpse. Let it all hang out. And I would go out, and I had ID cards, and the following year we had another child. Like I said, she died. I used that as an excuse to drink. If your daughter died, you drink too. So I had 2 children by the time I was 19 years of age. And I just had a hard time dealing with that. And then I got in trouble with the police department. Now, I'm used to living in the country. Country roads, river, crabbing, fishing, drinking, having a lot of fun. But I got in trouble with the police department. They frown upon you assaulting them. And I got locked up one night and got charged with assaulting 2 police officers, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct. Even got charged with verbal assault, which means I had a filthy mouth. I was cussing bad. And my family had contacts in the county. Back in the 50s and all, in early 60s, you could get things fixed pretty easy, the right amount of money. There's always a judge that you could touch. And so I got most of the charges dismissed. And the police officers really were upset about it. And they said, we're going to get you one of these days. Well, one night, maybe 6 months later, they caught me drinking and driving. They called a young girl underage, driving my car. We were drinking. They said, well, look who it is. And they said, well, look who it is. We're going to give you a break, though, because we know your family has contacts. We're going to give you 48 hours to get out of the county. We don't care where you go, but we don't want you to live in Anne Arundel County. That's the county I lived in, Anne Arundel, AA County. And so I moved, and I knew they were serious. So 2 days later, I packed up, and we moved to Baltimore City. I never lived in a city before in my entire life. I mean, all them houses look alike. You get drunk, you come home, you can't tell these houses apart in the city. And I moved in the city, and they got bars everywhere. We moved in a high-rent district in West Baltimore where they had the riots and all this past year. I mean, you can rent a whole house for $14 a week. And all them houses are saying they're row houses, and they got two bedrooms and a bath upstairs, and a living room, dining room, kitchen downstairs. And I moved in this house, 1800 block of William Street in West Baltimore. And like tonight's a typical Saturday night. I'd be sitting there, maybe if I'm home, I'd be sitting in the living room watching maybe a stolen television, drinking some beer, and all of a sudden my front door would bust open, and here comes a guy I'd never seen before in my entire life, running in my house, through my living room and dining room and kitchen, out the back door and down the alley he would go. Then here comes a police officer right behind him. Saturday Night Live Entertainment, 1800 block of Wilhelm Street. All this house was roach infested. I didn't know what roach in a city house was until I moved into the city. And my mother, you had flies or something. We never had roaches. In this house, you come down in the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning, turn the kitchen light on, these roaches crawling out underneath the table, they're on the ceiling, they're everywhere. And we set off sulfur, but they were called sulfur bombs. You set them off, and they would leave your house. But they go in your neighbor's house, and then he set his bombs off. We got these roaches running all over the place. And they get in your clothes at nighttime. And I'm working on the waterfront down the factory. I got a work uniform on, green work uniform on. I go to work, and I'm feeling something moving around in my shoe. They get in your shoes at nighttime. Sometimes they want to sleep under your collar. They wake up and decide to come out underneath your collar. And I'm talking to a guy at work. One day I'm talking to this guy at work. He's looking at me really funny. One of the roaches had his head out of my pocket going like this. Looking at this guy as I talked to him. And I thought that was very normal. That's a typical way of life. Hey, we get our gas and electric cut off in the city. We didn't worry about it. We run extension cord out my kitchen window, down the row into the next house, through his kitchen window. He'd plug it in. I paid the difference in gas and electric bill, told the guy to turn it back on. I lived up on that street for like 2.5 years. I remember coming home drunk one night. I saw a sign that went across the street, house for rent, $13. I moved across the street to save $1. I do stupid things like that. And also, I'd wrecked my car and lost my license, so it helped out being close to work and everything. And then the heat came off about 2.5 years later, and I moved back down to the county. Now, I needed a place to live in the country. Well, in my neighborhood, next neighborhood over, it was called Manhattan Beach. And they had a whole lot of summer homes on the riverbanks. And these are old brown shingled houses, no insulation, had electricity and running water, but no insulation, nothing. And people had money, lived in the city, had these shacks, these summer homes on the bank of the Magothy River. And they'd take the kids out of school Memorial Day and come down there and spend the whole summer on the river, crabbing, fishing, swimming, having a great time. Labor Day comes by, they bundle it up, close it up, move back to the city, put the kids in the private schools, and shut her down. Well, when they would move out, I would move in. Sometimes invited, sometimes not invited. But I need a place for the winter. And I take Nancy and a kid with me, my son. And so we're living in these summer homes. And if it wasn't a bad winter, it wasn't too bad. But I mean, if it snowed, you could see through the cracks. There was no insulation in these places. You see snow on the ground outside. The toilet bowl would freeze it over. You couldn't use that for the bathroom. You got to use a bucket now. Electricity maybe run off. We got to run an extension cord to a neighbor's house and plug in his summer home. And that's how I was living when I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I happened to be coming off that drunk when I was introduced to AA. And what happened was, after being in AA a few days, I missed the excitement. I was a barroom action drunk. I loved where there's good-looking women, there's band, there's music, there's dancing, fighting, gambling, you name it. I want to be where the action is, like a moth drawn to a flame. I used to ride down a meeting. After coming to meetings, I'd ride down the road with my sponsor. He said, you see that sign there, BAR bar, BAR bar? He said, you know what that means? I said, what? He said, beware, alcohol, run. Stay the hell out of drinking places. But I missed that. So all of a sudden, I'm feeling good. After young people bounce back fast in AA. They haven't been beat up like an old guy in AA. And I bounced back fast, and all of a sudden, I'm feeling good, and I missed the action. So I remember going to a meeting in AA about a week or so, and I decided to go downtown where the action is. I'm going down to Greenmont and 33rd, not far from the old Memorial Stadium. It's a great street. They had a lot of nice bars on there, Sweeney's and Judge's, the Stadium Lounge. They had all these nice bars there, and good-looking women and bands and everything. And I missed that. So after a meeting, I got my license back, and I went downtown, parked on Greenmont Avenue. I get out of my car. I'm walking up and down the sidewalk, seeing if I see any Easy Does It bumper stickers or circle and triangles on cars. I don't see nobody looks like they just came from a meeting around here. And I used to walk in the bar when I was drinking, like, give me a drink, just let's go. Now I'm not drinking. I sneak in the bar. I wiggle my way up to the bar. I asked the barmaid, I said, all I want is a plain Coca-Cola. She says, a plain Coca-Cola, real loud. I said, hey, don't make a big deal out of this. All I want is a little plain glass of Coca-Cola. A plain Coca-Cola, she says, real loud. All of a sudden, my perception is the damn band stopped playing. People stopped dancing, and everybody's turning around looking at me like this. I felt like I had a sign on top of my head saying, AA, 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 you know. I said, don't make a big deal out of this, please. She said, okay, but it's going to cost you $5. I said, $5? This is 1964. I could buy 3 cases of Coke for $5. She said, take it or get out. That's the only time in my entire life I was a sipper. I sipped that Coke. And all I'm saying is I got away with it going in there and not drinking. And you know, the next night was easier to walk back in there. And then the next night was even easier. And because I associated with drinking people and drinking places after coming to AA, what happens to us? I put myself in a bad situation, and I took a drink and I got drunk. Now, what happens when he gets drunk? Well, he gets into trouble. I may not get in trouble today or tomorrow, this week, but trust me, in a short while, I'm going to get in trouble. Listen, we don't make AA in good behavior. And I got drunk, and I got in a fight, and a lot of other things happened. And I said, I better go back to AA. I didn't know you could come back to AA for a while. I thought once you came here and you went out and took a drink, you're like excommunicated out of AA. You're not allowed to come back. And somebody said, no, you're allowed to go back. And I went back. I told this guy, Larry, who took me to my first meeting, how sorry I was I let him down. He said, stop right there. He said, you take a good look at me. I'm twice your age. And you go in the bathroom and take a look at you, and I guarantee you I look better than you do tonight. You take a drink and you let yourself down. I'm not going to jail for you. I'm not going to hospital for you. These things are going to happen to you. He gave me 2 guarantees. He said, number one, if you can stop drinking tonight, I guarantee you this. Even if things don't get better, you'll get better. As you get better, things will get better. Give it time. It takes time to get sick. It takes time to get well. The other guarantee is you're definitely an alcoholic. You continue drinking, I guarantee you this. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. I don't care how many DWIs you have, how many jails you've been in. I don't care what you've ever done. If you're an alcoholic, you continue drinking, it never, ever, ever gets better. And I've seen guys and gals come in here over the years, go out and take a drink, come back, and every one of them eventually will say something like this. Man, you ain't going to believe what happened this time. I said, try me. It never gets any better for us. Anyway, I didn't stay in AA. I said, I don't need AA. I went back to drinking. I was living in these abandoned summer home. And one night in, I guess like November, middle of November, I went out and I'd been on I'm the kind of drunk would go out and take a drink, and I get hooked up, and I wouldn't go home. Didn't go home. And then I sort of coming to and sobering up the next day. I'm thinking, hell, I didn't go home last night. Nancy's really going to be mad. I need another drink. Then I get thinking, well, hell, I'm already 1 day late. Why not make it 2? And then 2 days, why not make it? One time I went out for a drink, I came back like 6 weeks later. I figured you're already in trouble, make it worth its while. And that was my attitude. I had bad attitude. And so I moved down to these summer homes. And one night I came off of a bad drunk, and I went went berserk. Back in those days, they called it a thing I suffered from called menopause. I went crazy from drinking. Alcohol was so much in my system, I went just crazy. And I decided to knock out the doors, the windows. I just beat that house up, run my fist through the walls, the doors. I tried to put my head through a concrete porch. I mean, I just bust myself up. I came out of this thing with 2 police officers and a fireman sitting on top of me, holding me down. I was 6'2", and I weighed 265 pounds, and I'd gone nuts from drinking. And I was 24 years of age. I ended up in the hospital at night being sewed up, and the next day my family got me out of the hospital, took me to see the family doctor, Dr. Hahn, in Serrano Park, where I live today. And he said, Stu, you're 24 years old. Can't you just stop drinking? I said, no, I need a drink right now. He said, wow, we got to do something about that. There was no treatment centers back in the 60s. Drunks back in the 60s, what they did with us, they put us in a nut house, in a state mental institution, into a locked facility. And so here I am. There's no place to put me, so he said, we got to get you off the street before you kill yourself or somebody else. And they committed me to Crownsville State Hospital. They put me into a locked ward where they take away your belt and your shoestrings, same thing you can do to hurt yourself. And you're sitting there and you eat with a soup spoon, and after about 3 days, they do an evaluation, and the psychiatrist says, well, we've diagnosed you as an alcoholic, and you're going to have to go up to Cottage 15 out of this locked ward. I said, what do you do up there? He said, you work and you go to AA. I said, whoa, stop. I didn't come down here to go to AA and work. He said, fine, stay right where you're at. I could have been in Cottage 15 smoking, had my belt on, my shoestrings, eat with a knife. Life is good. But no. I choose to stay in this locked ward, eating with a soup spoon and all. And we were making little ceramic ashtrays for therapy, and they gave us some leather, made little leather wallets, and they even let us make a leather belt that we could get when we got discharged. So I made me a belt. Life's good. But it got boring after a while, after a few weeks. And one of the other younger guys in our ward said, can't we do something besides just make these ashtrays and crap? And the doctor said, like what? He said, dancing. How we like to dance, us young people do. I said, I've done a lot of things. I may have danced some guys when I was in a blackout. I don't recall doing this, but I may have. I don't know. We don't know what we did in the blackout. He said, that gives me an idea of dancing. Swear to God, it wasn't even a day or so later, we go in there for therapy. He's got a little record player on his table, some little 45s, and we're sitting there. I'm thinking, I ain't dancing with these damn guys, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, the door opens, and they bring all the girls from their nut ward into our ward. Wow, this is exciting. And they bring them in, they mix them with us, and they put the record player. They're doing an experiment. They never did nothing like this before, but they're going to try dancing for therapy. And we got all these nut girls and nut guys in there. I see a cute little blonde sitting at a table over there, and I asked her would she like to dance. I got my wrist all wrapped up from going through the windows and everything. Got my forehead all taped up. It's nothing like trying to impress a girl in a nut house. I'll tell you that right now. So I asked her to dance. I like to dance. And we're dancing around, and I come off the avenue. I used to hang up Sweeney's and all, and I knew how, little jiggerbug and stuff like that. I was a good dancer, and I'm making some moves on her. I mean, I'm twisting her. I'm dipping her. Man, I'm doing all kind of stuff with this girl. I'm trying to impress her, you know what I mean? And it just seemed like we clicked. And then we had a slow dance, and I told her, I said, God, there's some chemistry. I feel there's chemistry here. Don't move. I'm going to go get me a piece of paper and a crayon. I'm going to write your name and number down. When I get out of here, we're going to hook up. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden, we're dancing around, and she says, you tried to commit suicide, didn't you? I said, no. She said, you cut your wrist? I said, no, they got cut going through some windows. She said, no, you tried to commit suicide. I said, no. I said, wait a minute. By the way, what are you in here for? And she said, I killed my husband. So I stepped back. I'm looking at her. And I said, you know what? I know I'm here and I'm crazy, but I'm not stupid. I'm getting me a new dance partner right now. And forget about the phone number and a piece of paper. This ain't going to work out. All I can say, I stayed in there for 6 weeks doing this kind of crap. And I got out, and the first day I got out, I got drunk. And it was a constant merry-go-round of drinking all the time, getting into trouble, wrecking cars. I was at a meeting not too long ago, and the girl said, when she was drinking, she never ever remembered trading in a car. I'm thinking, I never traded in a car the whole time I wrecked every single car I had. I never traded a car until I got sober. I thought, wow. See, you can keep learning things new in AA. So anyway, I ended up in a lot of trouble. We moved a lot. It was cheaper to move and pay rent. You know, I moved twice in 1 week one time. Somebody talked about moving along a lot of times. I moved a lot when I was a use and abuse society. Anyway, I came off of a bad drunk, March the 12th. And this is my last drunk I went on. I drank that drunk. I went out after work. I worked a midnight shift on a factory on the waterfront. And they put the bad guys on midnight because no bosses or anybody important can see you at nighttime. And they don't even want you around, but the union will protect you. And so I'm working. I got off work at 8 o'clock in the morning, decided to go out drinking again like I do every day. I drank every day. Tremendous capacity. I was drinking at least a fifth every day. And I decided to go downtown. I'm drunk. I go down to Baltimore City. I'm living now, when I got out of the nut house, I got a row house closer to work, outside on the outskirts of the city, so I could go to work easy. And because I lost my license and everything again. And my last drunk took place in a bar down the corner, Mount Royal on Charles Street in Baltimore City. Nice bar called the Bucket of Blood. Real high-class place. And the reason they called it a Bucket of Blood, when you guys are drinking in most bars, and a fight breaks out, somebody gets in and breaks it up. They didn't do that in the Bucket of Blood. They locked the doors, no cops, no one's coming in and no one's going out. Go ahead and fight it out and get it over with. So there's always a lot of blood around with guys fighting and everything. And so I'm down there, I'm feeling a little frisky. I'm not proud, but I'm looking for a woman. Looking for a woman. And I met this gal sitting at the bar, and she was cute. I sort of make a move on her and tell her maybe we could get together and all. And she said, "Ain't going to work here, buddy." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're looking for a woman, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I am too." I said, "Well, gives me an idea. Maybe we can go hunting together." She says, "I'm bisexual, but tonight I'm looking for a woman." I said, "Hell, let's go hunting." We went every bar around there. No woman would have anything to do with us. So we decided we'll spend the night together. And we ended up getting a room that was expensive, about $12. And I don't know what happened, room. She had a bag with her, and I don't know whether she beat my ass with a hose or what she did, but I come out of that room, I was black and blue, and I woke up 5:30 in the morning. I got to get out of here. I don't know what happened. I don't even want to think about it. But she had all these things with her, and so I called a cab to Baltimore Hollins, and I knew that bar opened at 6 o'clock, and I could go in and get a drink. And I went in there, and somewhere in the process of drinking again, I passed out and I fell on the floor, and they couldn't get me up. But one of the guys who worked the midnight shift of the factory came by, and he saw me, he knew who I was, and he got me up and took me home to my house. And pulled up from my house, and I felt so ashamed. Been laying on the floor. I was dirty. I'd been out all night. I was all bruised up and everything else. I walked out of the house. My wife opened the door. I walked in, and we have a big shadow box mirror those days up hanging on the wall. And I looked in the mirror, and it looked like a monster looking back at me. And all I said, "God, please don't let me go off again. I know I'm going back to Crownsville. Please, God, don't let me go off." I went up and shook that drink out, and I don't know why, but I thought about Alcoholics Anonymous. Wow. And I found myself calling AA, find out where a meeting was, and I caught a bus down to the county to go to an AA meeting. That was March the 12th, 1966, and through the grace of God, I haven't had to take a drink since that day. But I went down there to that meeting. I met a man at that meeting named Ed, who lived like 3 blocks from the meeting. I lived about 15 miles from the meeting. Ed said, "How'd you get down?" I said, "I caught a bus." He said, "I'll take you home." And so he took me home. And he said, "I'll be back tomorrow night, pick you up, take you to your meeting." I found there's a difference between being around AA and being in AA. Look, you can have Mr. and Miss AA for a sponsor. You can belong to the group. Hell, you can memorize the 12 steps. You can make coffee, pick up ashtray. You can do a lot of things. But if you don't stop drinking, you ain't going to get sober. Stopping drinking is the most important thing you're ever going to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because that's where it all starts. They say meeting makers make it. Look, if they don't want to go to meetings, hell, they ain't going to stop drinking. They ain't going to do nothing else. And so my new sponsor spoon-fed me Alcoholics Anonymous. He took me under his wing, and he didn't tell me how to get sober. He showed me how to get sober. He didn't tell me to go to meetings. He took me to meetings. And he every day he says, you go to a meeting, try to learn one thing new. If you go to 30 meetings in a row, you got 30 new things. And so I hooked up with Ed. I'm going to meetings. I used to shake a lot when I got sober. I shook like crazy. I said, look how I'm shaking here. I said, maybe if I could just smoke a little dope or something, calm these shakes down, I'll be okay. He said, no. Shaking ain't going to kill you. He said, I've never seen anyone, they wrote on his death certificate, he shook to death. Booze will kill you, shaking ain't. Put one hand here, and set on your hands, you ain't going to fall out of your seat. You'll stop shaking, give it time. So that's what I did. And he said, and the most important thing you do is just for today. Look, no one back in the 60s ever told me to do 90 meetings in 90 days. You'll never see that nowhere in AA literature. That's treatment center language came in here. He said, you know, it's not a 90-day program. It's not a 30-day. It's a one day at a time program. We do it one day at a time. So he said, look, I came in, I'm 25. You know what I was worried about? Suppose I lived to be 75 years old. 50 years without a drink. How the hell am I going to stay sober 50 years? You know what I was worried about in March? Memorial Day. 4th of July. How am I going to stay sober on these holidays? New Year's Eve. He said, well, I'll tell you, we got a secret how to stay sober during tough times and holidays. He said, I don't want you to forget it, so get a piece of paper and pencil. I'm going to give you the answer. So I got me a pencil, a piece of paper. He said, now write this down. This is how you stay sober during tough times and holidays. Write this down. Don't drink. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this deal out. Now, what happens? You don't take a drink. I heard a guy one night in the meeting, he said, this first drink got me drunk. I hit my sponsor. I said, what the hell is he, a sissy? How did he get drunk? Maybe, I'll go, okay. I'll give him the benefit. Maybe he's drinking out of a gallon of gas. But you don't get drunk on one drink. He said, look, I always thought it was a 13th drink, third six-pack, second, fifth, some magic number. He said, no, it's the first. I said, how do you get drunk? He said, look, if you don't take the first one, you can't take the 13th or the second, fifth, or the third six-pack. He said, the first drink does all the damage. He said, look, you stand on a railroad track, you get run over by a freight train, it ain't the damn caboose that does all the damage, it's the engine. So if you don't start it, you ain't got to stop it. Keep postponing it. If a day's too long, make it a half a day, make it an hour. Just for today, right now, don't drink no matter what happens. He said, and then I started asking about how often should I go to meetings? He said, how often did you drink? I said, drink every day. He said, well, you go to meetings every day. You go to meetings, so we tell you don't go to meetings. 3 years. I said, I don't have a car. We're out in the county. How am I going to get to meetings? There's miles and miles. There's no buses half these places. How am I going to get to these meetings without a car? He said, you didn't need a car to get drunk. You don't need a car to get sober. You found a way to get drunk, you'll find a way to get to me. You stay on the corner, we'll pick you up. We'll come to your house. Hitchhike, catch a bus. So I started going to meetings. 3 years before I ever missed a meeting. I went on holidays. He said, you're building a foundation. The foundation, the biggest thing you can put in that foundation is not drinking and putting time, give you a lot of meetings. Every time you go to a meeting, learn something new. You ever go to a meeting and you hear somebody say something, you say, oh man, wow, I love that. I can't wait to get home and tell my wife what I just heard tonight. I get home, and she said, well, how was the meeting? I said, the best meeting I ever went to. She said, what'd they say? I said, I don't know. But that guy was good. What's his name? I don't know. But we just kept coming back. I saw guys walk around the meetings, and they walk around, and they were reading the big book and everything. I told my sponsor, I said, what's that? He said, you need to get a big book. The program of the Alcoholics Anonymous is in that book. It's called A Text, Something to Study. So I get me a big book. Next thing you know, I'm running that A like this. Got me a big book. My sponsor said, what's in that big book? He said, open me up and read me a paragraph. I opened up and I read a paragraph and said, now what did that say? I said, I don't know. He said, you put the book down and you go to meetings and you just talk with drunks and you listen. And if you go to meetings and like I said, Lauren, one thing he said, you got a lot of things going for you in due time. Now look, I'm 25. I'm the only young guy in my area staying sober. But invariably, a young guy would come in. And once I had a few months, also the thing was, I'm in AA 10 days, and I'm riding down the road with my sponsor. And back in those days, like I said, there's no volunteer meetings. You got called on. The spirit of God's in that room. You'll get called on if you're meant to talk. Ego's going to make you raise that hand. So no one's calling on me. I'm in AA 10 days. I said, Ed, I've been here 10 days, and no one's ever called on me to say nothing in a meeting. He said, what do you want to talk about? I said, drinking. He said, hell, we know how to drink. Do you know how not to drink? I said, well, for 10 days. He said, look, since you want to talk, you got an ego. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. For the next 6 months, you don't say nothing at a meeting except your name and you're an alcoholic. He said, God gave you one mouth and 2 ears. He wants you to listen twice as much as he wants you to talk. Otherwise, he had put one great big ear on top of your head and 2 mouths like one on each cheek here. So you just listen. And we'll talk before the meeting and after the meeting. But when they call on you at the meeting for the next 6 months, you say your name, you're an alcoholic, I'm here to listen. That way you ain't got to figure out what you're going to say or anything else, and just tune in. And that's what I did. I had a speech impediment when I got sober. I just stuttered a lot. I found, look, I hate to do this, Steve, but I found by talking fast, I don't stutter. So I started talking fast. I couldn't see when I got sober. I'm walking around squinching all the time. My sponsor said, what the hell's the matter? I said, I can't see. He said, get some glasses. I said, I look better without them. He said, you ain't here to win a beauty contest. You're here to get sober. I used to talk with my hands on my mouth all the time. Like, if you get your fingers out of your mouth, we can't hear you when you talk. I said, half my teeth are missing. You hang in a bucket of blood, half your teeth are going to be missing. He said, stay sober and buy new ones. I got new teeth. You know what I mean? My whole life started changing. My whole life started. I went to a meeting one night and I saw with the word group spelled GRO-UP. Grow up. I got to grow up. I saw a sign one time that said KISS. I'm trying to figure out what it means. He said it means keep it simple, stupid. Remember, the first 3 letters of the word stupid is stew. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. And I could grasp these things. I could grasp these little cliches and these little things. And I had an opportunity to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. Got active. So when a young guy would come around, all the old guys would dump the young guy on me. And I'd take him to a meeting in his car or on a bus or hitchhike with him or something. We'd get to a meeting. And I kept working. They kept dumping all these young guys. I must have, in my first 3 years in AA, I must have sponsored 100 young drunks in AA. And on my 3rd anniversary, wasn't a damn one of them sober. But I was. I found out they don't stay sober through the grace of stew. They stay sober through the grace of God. And the minute I stepped out of the way, guys stepped in, they started staying sober despite me. So I've always been working with a lot of drunks. I used to take these young drunks to meetings, and back in those days, it was mostly all old people in the meetings. And a young drunk would finally say something like this. Well, where's all the young people in AA? I said, well, we're on maybe the east side of Baltimore in the county. I said, they're in West Baltimore. We'll go to West Baltimore Tuesday night. I'll show you some young drunks. There weren't no young drunks in AA in West Baltimore. And we go over there, and they say, where they at? I said, hell, they must be in Dundalk, down the south part of Baltimore. We'll go there on Friday night. I'll show you. I told my sponsor, I wasn't lying to him. I'm just trying to buy him some time to make him realize age has nothing to do with this deal. But that's how I would deal with the young people in AA. Now, fast forward 60, 65, I'm old now. 40 years, 45 years sobriety. Now I start working with a lot of old drunks. I take an old guy to a typical meeting today, and he looks around and says, where the hell's all the old people at? All I see is a lot of young. I said, they're in Dundalk. They're on the east side of Baltimore. I'll take you over there and show these old people, So it's funny how the way it twists and turns its way around. But it's a simple things that grab my attention. I can't believe what time it is. I walked in to meet one night, and an old lady walks up to me. I used to take to myself so serious. And she said, Stu, are you happy? I said, yeah, I'm happy. She said, when the hell are you going to tell your face about it? Okay, don't be afraid to laugh and smile. It's called the joy of good living, the road to happy destiny. Get excited about sobriety. I went crazy about AA. I got involved in working with my whole life got caught up in AA. I'm just working with drunks, going to meetings, Mr. AA, and I knew my life was all screwed up. And I went to talk to an old timer one time. He said, you know what your problem is? He said, you need to find some balance in your life, some moderation, balance. He said, your life should be like a perfect X, a cross. He said, so much time for family, work, play, and AA. Your life is like an L. All AA and all work. No family, no play. You got to find that balance. You got a wife waiting for a husband. You got kids waiting to be a father. He said, there's more to AA than just going to meetings and working with drunks. Nothing wrong with that if you're single, but if you're married and got kids, it's a different picture. All I can tell you is this. I went through a divorce. I was sober about 14, 15 years in AA. If I would have paid as much attention to my wife as I did these drunks, I would have stayed married. It's one of the biggest mistakes I made in my life is going through a divorce. I went through a divorce, most painful thing I ever went through. And Nancy and I were married since we were 17. And we went through that divorce, and it wasn't because of her behavior, it was because of my behavior. I take full responsibility for that thing. And so we got a divorce. We didn't run out and, her hook up with somebody, me hook up with somebody. We talked to a lawyer friend of ours, wrote a 2-year separation agreement that neither one of us could get a divorce. We couldn't get a divorce for the next 2 years while we got therapy, went to counseling, whatever we had to do to try to salvage this marriage. Well, we waited 3 years and it didn't work out. We ended up getting a divorce. And neither one of us ever remarried. And she had been very involved in Al-Anon. And as the years went by, she found herself a gentleman in her life. I had a lady in my life. And we were both doing some light housekeeping. That's a polite word for called shacking up. Okay. So she was living with a guy, and I was living with this girl. And we neither never married, and we still tried to take care of things. Our kids growing up, left home and everything. And then she called me, I guess about 14 and a half years ago, 15 years ago. And neither one of us had remarried. And we got divorced almost 30 years ago. And she said, that cancer I had, it came back. I said, wow, I'm sorry to hear that. She said, you better call Dawn, my daughter, lives in California. My son was in Florida. Tell them what's going on. And so they came back. I picked them up at the airport, took them down. We went and saw her and talked to her doctors and found out she had melanoma cancer that was inoperable. And they gave her 6 months to live. I said, would you mind if I got involved in trying to make life better for you for the next 6 months? She said, I would like that. So for the next 6 months, I just retired. I had time on my hands. I told the lady, Kathy, I was with, I said, look, she's the mother of my children. I love her. I've known her since she's 13 years old. I said, I want to go back and see what I can do to help her get through this. And I want to thank God for giving me this opportunity. And I'm not bragging about me. I'm bragging about Alcoholics Anonymous, what I've been taught by my sponsors and teachers in AA. So I went back, and every morning I'd get up, and I'd go down to her house, and her boyfriend and her sister and them would leave, and I would spend the day with her, and we would, for the next 6 months, help her get through this. And I remember one day we were sitting down there, and we were talking and reminiscing, and I told her how much sorry I was, the hell I put her through, drunk and sober. And I said, I want to tell you how sorry I'm about all this. And she said, Stu, I forgave you a long time ago. When are you going to learn to forgive yourself? I said, I just want to be here for you to the very end. And we hugged each other. We told each other we still loved each other as two human beings. And I said, I'll be here for you all the way to the very end. I wish it was me dying instead of you. I really do. You're a better mother than I ever was a father. Anyway, I helped her get down through the point that when she died, May the 10th, coming up on 15 years, I was by her bedside and thanking God for giving me the opportunity to go back and make that living amends to her. It got a lot of respect back from me, from my family, and from my friends and everybody else, to the point that when she had the funeral at the little church on the side of the road, at the service, the most touching thing happened to me in sobriety almost in my life was at her memorial service, her funeral. My daughter, my son-in-law, and my 3 grandchildren were sitting up in the front row, and my son and his wife, and they were sitting in on the row next to him, on the front. And and I'm sitting in the back row of the church. This isn't about me. This is about her today. And I'm sitting in the back row, just being grateful I can be there. And right before the service started, my daughter gets up, and she tells the minister, she said, Reverend, could you just wait for 1 minute before we start this service? And he said, sure, what do you want to do? She said, I need to do something. She walked to the back of the church, took my hand, walked me up. She said, Dad, you belong up here with our family. And put me on the front row. That was the most touching thing, one of the most touching things that ever happened to me in my entire life. Thank you, God, for giving me that opportunity to do something like that. Then I was end up my mother died like 25 years ago. My father was trying to live on his own, and he couldn't take care of himself. And finally, he sold his home and everything. We put him into an assisted living home, not far from where he grew up and lived. He didn't want to come live with none of the kids or anybody. He was very independent. And we had to have a family meeting. Who's going to take care of him? 7 kids. So we had a family meeting. My sister, well, I guess you're going to choose me to take care of you. She said, I'm an accountant. I know how to handle money. And my brother has a college education. All my brothers and sisters did very well for themselves. He said, no. He said, you know what I did? He said, I picked Stu to take care of me. Now, I hated my father when I was a kid. I thought he was too decent. He was too kind. He was too nice. And I learned to love him in sobriety. He said, I want him to take care of me. You know why? He said, when he tells me he'll be here, I'm sober a long time today. He said, when he tells me he'll be here at 3 o'clock on Thursday, he's here at 3 o'clock. You say you'll be here Thursday, I may see you Friday. He's a man of his word. I want him to take care of me. And I had the opportunity to take care of my father the last couple of years of his life. And never forget, I went down to see him one day. He lived in there, and he didn't want to be there for a while. He died when he was 94 years old. He never used a walker or cane or nothing. He was a spry little guy, and I'd go down there, and he was talking about leaving. I said, Dad, you may not want to leave. I said, look around. I said, there's 10 of you men in here, about 70 women. And he looked around and said, I'll be damned. And he was like an old rooster in a hen house. And all of them are old, 80, 90 years old or more, most of them. And I used to stop by the dollar store and pick up bags of hard candy, take it down, give it to him. And he always had to wear a shirt with a pocket on it so he could give the old lady. They would follow around, he'd give them candy. You know, he's called the Candy Man. And I went downstairs with Larry one day. We went down to see him, and he was sitting there with a woman, a younger woman. She was like 91, he was 93 or something. And I said, who's your friend? He said, Sweetie Pie. I said, what's her name? Sweetie Pie. She said, you don't even know my name. He said, what the hell's the matter? We're having fun, aren't we? I said, Dad, I'll help you out. What's your name? She said, Doris. And I took a magic marker and wrote her name in the palm of his hand. So when he went to talk to her, he just looked down like that, and he could name her. So I used to bring this candy. One day I stopped to get some candy, and they didn't have no more hard candy, but they had a lot of taffy-type candy. And I bought some bag. I wasn't thinking. I took his taffy candy down to him. And then a few days later, I go down and see him. He said, what the hell were you thinking? He said, I gave them candy. Hell, all their teeth are coming out and everything. He says, man, don't never bring that taffy candy down here no more. But I had the opportunity to take care of him, and I was there, and he told me 2 days before he died, he said, I'm dying. I said, you ain't dying. He said, I'm dying. I'm dying. He said, I know I'm dying. I said, well, how about if I move in here and take care of you, Dad? I moved into his room, spent his last 2 days of his life with him. What a gift God gave me that time. What an opportunity to make another living amends to my father. I gave my father hell, man. I put him through a ringer. I would not want a kid like me. And I never forget, I was on the side of his bed, and we're giving him like a little bit of morphine and all, help ease his pain. I'll never forget, I was down there looking at him, and I just started telling him how much I loved him, how much I want to grow up and be just like him. And I had the privilege of having my father's hand, his head in the palm of my hand, and me kissing him and telling him how much I loved him, and I want to be just like him when he took his last breath. What a gift God gave me. What a gift. This can happen to me, can happen to anybody. I've lived an exciting life. I live an exciting life. You may not believe it. I could talk another damn hour. I've already gone over a little bit. But I'm not going to. All the other speakers held the girl Friday night, Thursday night took a half an hour and then 40 minutes. I'm thinking, does anybody speak an hour around here? I hope it don't overrun this thing. You can oversell something, you know. But I'm going to wrap it up with just a couple things. So I've lived an exciting life. I remarried 13 years ago. Kath and I did light housekeeping for about 17 years. I was doing a lot of traveling and everything. She's the greatest thing happened to me in my entire life. Kathy is not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon. I said, well, then what are you? She said, I'm at Al and nothing. Whoever gets up in the morning, puts coffee on. I'm retired. She works 2 days a week at the home. She teaches piano, gets piano lessons. And whoever gets up early puts the coffee on, and we put our books out, and we start our day off. The guys I sponsor know, don't call my house before 8:30 in the morning unless you're in trouble. And don't call after 8:30 at night unless you're in trouble. That's time I need. I'm putting balance in my life to spend time with my family. There is a family. There's the life outside of the AA rooms. It's easy staying sober in here. Problem not in here. It's out there in the real world. And so, Kath and I, we read. Now, she's not in Al-Anon, but she reads the ODAT book every morning. She's been to some Al-Anon meetings, and for her, it don't fit right now. And I read Daily Reflections. And then she reads a little book called A Page of Letting Go. And then I read my 24-hour day, little 24-hour day book. Now, I go to some places, and people say, well, you know, that 24-hour day is Hazleton literature. It's not AA-approved literature. I said, well, hell, neither is MapQuest, but it sure gets my ass to some meetings, I'll tell you that right now. That's all we had back in the 60s. There was no Daily Reflections. And so I love that book. I still read it to this day. But I live an exciting life. Cassie's been one of the best things happening in my entire life. Every time I go somewhere, I invite her to come with me. She has a hearing problem that can't be fixed, no matter how good her hearing aids are. She doesn't really like to travel, but she doesn't deny me. The balance I put in my life is, like this week, I'm here. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be in Ocean City at Oceanfront Conference. In between, there's a wonderful convention at Raleigh, the midwinter. Love to go down there, but you know what? I don't do it. I put a square, and I'm putting some balance. I don't take 3 weeks in a row like that. People call me sometimes and say, will you come here and speak or something? I said, let me look at my calendar. I can't do it that weekend. Well, what's going on? I said, I have a commitment that weekend. They said, where? I said, 523 Evergreen Road. They said, what the hell is there? I said, my home. I said, if I gave 3 meetings in a row, 3 weekends, if I go back to that pattern, I'm going to screw up another marriage in AA. I'll end up sleeping single in a double bed, and that ain't no fun, trust me. And so I put balance. She's absolutely wonderful. I'm down here tonight, she'll say a prayer for me. I don't know what I'm going to say when I stand up. I have one story comes out different ways. Larry and I go in the room before I come down. We get on our knees, take a third-step prayer, and ask God to give me some words here tonight. See what happens. So I'm just as curious as you are what I'm going to say. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. I remember telling my sponsor, I was early in AA, sober for a while. I said, Ed, you know what? I know my parents loved me. I know they did, but we never communicated like that. We never said, I love you, and it was a cold family. We weren't affectionate, but I know I was loved, but we never communicated like, I love you. I said, I'm 25 years old, and I've never heard either one of my parents tell me they love me. He said, wow, that's sad. He said, I'm going to ask you a question. How many times have you told your parents you love them? I said, never. He said, then why don't you start it? Why don't you start it? I said, okay. So I remember calling my mother up. I said, Mom, I need to tell you something before I get off the phone. She said, what's that? I said, Mom, I need to tell you I love you. Long silence. I'm thinking, man, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen? And then she says this, you're drinking again, aren't you? I figure I'm going to hear something real spiritual from her. And she said, no, you're drinking again, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not drinking, Mom. You're not smoking them funny cigarettes? We don't talk like that. I said, I don't care. I said, I need to tell you I love you. Well, it must be that cult you got yourself involved in. I said, oh, Mom. And I kept doing it. I didn't quit. Every time before I'd hang up with her, I'd talk to her. I said, Mom, I need to tell you one more time, I love you. God, I love you. Then one day she says this back to me. Ditto. Still couldn't say it. And then she said, well, same here. Well, me too. And then one day she said, well, I love you too. Wow. Then I started on my father, which is tougher. That took longer, but eventually he said, I love you too, son. And it started my brothers and sisters. We used to get together. It was it was cold. So it was just, our get-togethers were, no one hugged and kissed and all. I'm telling you, after I was in AA 7 years, we get together. It was like a love fest. Everybody's kissing, slobbering all of each other and telling each other we love each other. We send emails. And I love you. It's the most powerful thing in the entire world. I love you. I love you. And that's what's happened. Some of the excitement happened in my life. I swear to God, I apologize for running over about 10 minutes. And damn it, I would love to talk for another hour, but I'm not going to. I'll be here all by myself. But you all want to eat some ice cream and have some dessert. But I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart coming down here. Just seeing some old friends, meeting some new friends. Just having an opportunity. The worst story you're ever going to hear in your entire life is yours when you stand up and tell it. I don't compare my story with no one else's story in AA. We all have our own story. Basically, it's all the same. I tell you, I'm an alcoholic, you know 80% of my story. And I thank you for letting me have an opportunity to tell my story because I want to remind myself where I came from. You can lose your sobriety like that. One moment of I don't give a damn how long you're sober. One moment of temporary insanity, and boom, you can lose it like that. One moment of stupid thinking and insanity. Look, I've been places, so bunch of old-timers. We've seen guys with over 40 years take a drink. They didn't do the homework. They got resentments and quit going to meetings. Look, I never want to think AA needs me more than I need AA. I need AA more than I ever needed my entire life. I hope I never get to the point I don't have a sponsor in AA. I've always had a sponsor. I got a sponsor now that I've known over 41 years. I got a home group. I still work with drunks. They don't work as good as they used to. I don't think they're as desperate as they used to. But I try. That's all we can do. But I love being sober, and I hope you do too, and I thank you for a wonderful weekend. God bless you.
If y'all will just give us a minute, we'll be down, and we'll all say the Lord's Prayer in unison.